You may have heard of a little game called Dungeons and Dragons. Even if you're not a player yourself, I am. I'm a big fan. But even if you're not a player yourself, there is a story here that may have relevance to your life. Here's a fun fact about video games, of which D&D has been the inspiration for many. The video gaming industry is larger than the movie industry and the music industry combined. The video game industry, it's larger than I'll go bigger. It's bigger than the movie industry and the automobile industry combined. Isn't that wild? Kind of snuck up there because culturally not everybody does it. But that's a fact. The tabletop gaming industry has also exploded in popularity over the last 20 years. Even if you're not a gamer yourself, you might have heard of Critical Role and Matt Mercer. Arguably, one of the most financially successful things to arise out of the social media era. You might have heard of Brennan Lee Mulligan's Roll20. Not Roll20, Dimension 20. Point being, there are a lot of shows that work their way into the general public consciousness that have their origins in Dungeons and Dragons. And although it's less well known, they have their origins in something called the Open Gaming License. That's something Dungeons and Dragons put together, or the Wizards of the Coast, who make Dungeons and Dragons, put together a while back that essentially gives content creators, or rather the general public, the right to modify and display works with their game in it. Well, recently they decided they were going to make changes to that. I have actually some background with this. Once upon a time, I was going to do I did do, for a local news company, a tabletop RPG Let's Play, essentially. They call those real plays. But we didn't use Dungeons and Dragons. It was mostly just for funsies for a bunch of employees at a news station. But we didn't use that because there was very real concerns about the Open Gaming License and the fact that they could choose Wizards of the Coast to modify it at any time. Recently, that came to pass. Wizards of the Coast said it got leaked that they were going to make some changes, and that would have deeply affected the current content creators who rely upon that to make their living. Here is a fella called No Nats One discussing it and a fascinating development that followed.
I'm actually making 3 videos in one day. This is absolutely bonkers, and just when I thought, well, no announcement today, nothing else to talk about, who else but Paizo comes out of nowhere, well, not nowhere,
the makers of Pathfinder, another tabletop
field,
RPG,
and just tackles us with the biggest announcement I've seen so far. So big that I read the first half of the post and just thought, I'm just gonna read it out loud in the video, explain what I'm reading, because oh my god, this changes a lot. Paizo announces system-neutral open RPG license. This is insane. Kind, take your bell off, otherwise you're going to be jingling through the whole video. Paizo's not only saying, we're going to go do our own thing. Paizo's saying, we're going to remake the thing that everyone has been using. Paizo is going to make their own license. The same license that let them exist in the first place is now going to be made anew by them themselves. Let's dive into this open RPG article and see what we're looking at. For the last several weeks, as rumors of Wizards of the Coast new version of the
Before he gets into the details, just to go over what he's saying there. So that the OGL, the Open Gaming License. If you don't know what what Pathfinder is. It's sort of a spin-off from D&D, but it became its own thing altogether. If you're a gamer, you might have seen Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous, Kingmaker. These were pretty well-selling games. It looks like they are going to take the place in society that Dungeons and Dragons, or rather Wizards of the Coast, had. Here it is.
Open game license began circulating among publishers and on social media. Gamers across the world have been asking what Paizo plans to do in light of concerns regarding WotC's rumored plan to deauthorize the existing OGL 1.0a. We have been awaiting further information, hoping that Wizards would realize that, for more than 20 years, the OGL has been a mutually beneficial license which should not and cannot be revoked. While we continue to await an answer from Wizards, we strongly feel that Paizo can no longer delay making our own feelings about the importance of open gaming a part of the public discussion. Paizo is literally saying, Wizards, it's been a week and a half, you had your chance. We are speaking up before you do. How does that look for Watson?
So, when they say it's been a week and a half, the initial leak happened a week and a half ago. And Wizards has chosen to be quiet on it. And then there was an additional leak showing that they were doing, and if you're a follower of this show, you'll recognize this, the old cover-up playbook. Wait for the public to forget about it, then do the thing they were planning on doing anyway. Just despicable behavior from a company I honestly had really admired up until this point. Absolutely despicable. So again, the second leak showed they saw the negative reaction to this. They have a product called D&D Beyond right now, which is subscription-based. Oof, always be nervous about that. It's subscription-based, and they essentially said, let's let this level out, see how subscriptions do, and then enact it. He's going to go into detail about what that open gaming license entailed, and rather, more importantly, or what changes were entailed, and importantly, what Paizo has done about it.
You know, how does that look for Wizards that their direct competitor gave them a week and a half and then said enough is enough, we're stepping in? This line is incredible. We believe that any interpretation that the OGL 1.0 or 1.0a were intended to be revocable or able to be deauthorized is incorrect with good reason. We were there. Paizo owner Lisa Stevens and Paizo president Jim Butler were leaders on the D&D team at Wizards at the time. Brian Lewis, co-founder of Azora Law, the intellectual property law firm that Paizo uses, was the attorney at Wizards who came up with the legal framework for the OGL itself.
So you'll recall back to when I said I have some prior experience with this. That's fascinating. I was not aware that so much of Paizo was there for the creation of the open gaming license. However, looking at the words on paper and having the mistrust of capitalist forces that tends to crop up when you work in the media, it was read to be something that was not so clearly written that some nefarious individual couldn't later choose to interpret it in a way that would have put the production we were talking about at the time in jeopardy. What's fascinating here is that the Paizo is saying, no, that's what it's supposed to say. However, now he's getting to the however.
Paizo was literally there for every step of the OGL process being written. They also mentioned they've worked very closely with Ryan Dancy, who I said was the visionary who conceived it in the first place. I didn't say that. It says that on the page. I stole it. I'm stealing from you, Paizo. Sue me. It blows my mind that Paizo has the gall to say this. Paizo does not believe that the OGL 1.0a can be deauthorized ever. While we are prepared to argue that point in a court of law if need be, We don't want to have to do that, and we know many of our fellow publishers are not in a position to do so. Paizo is ready to throw down legal money to fight Wizards on this, knowing full well that other smaller publishers don't have the funds to follow them into a legal battle. They're still willing to go mano-a-mano with the literal dragon to take it on, and I respectable. That's where I stopped reading, and everything here on is blind to me. As Paizo has evolved, the parts of the OGL that we ourselves value have changed. When we needed to quickly bring out Pathfinder 1st Edition to continue publishing our popular monthly adventures back in 2008, using Wizards language was important and expeditious. But in our non-RPG products, including our Pathfinder Tales novels, the Pathfinder Adventure card game, and others, we shifted our focus away from D&D tropes to lean harder into ideas from our own writers. By the time we went to work on Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Wizards of the Coast's open game content was significantly less important to us, and so our diviners, the Paizo diviners. And so our designers and developers wrote the new edition without using Wizards' copyright expressions of any game mechanics. While we still published it under the OGL, the reason was no longer to allow Paizo to use Wizards' expressions, but to allow other companies to use our Are you serious? What? There's actually no OGL? There's no OGL in PF2.
Okay,
what?
So it sounds like a lot of going into jargon there a little bit. What they're saying is they're not reliant on the whims of Wizards of the Coast, the makers of D&D, with the products they've made after a certain point. Meaning, they can do as they please with them. Meaning...
Is there actually no OGL usage or SRD usage in PF2? I thought a lot of what they used was technically considered SRD, but Paizo is very confident it's
meaning
not.
Wizards has it.
Which means we might see PF2 going completely unchanged.
Pathfinder
They'll just take the
SRD
out of any future publication and nothing changes, which is incredible. People don't need to learn a whole new game or slightly different game.
So that's really important because tabletop gaming as an entertainment medium, I suppose, it's like football, for example. And imagine every time there's a new edition, there's slight tweaks to the rules, etc., etc. But imagine every time you wanted to film a football game, you had to invent a whole new sport. So some standardization is important. It's not just important for the players, it's important for the fans. So that a fan can come in and understand what's going on. They don't have to, if they're going to appreciate a show, they don't have to learn a whole new system. Dungeons and Dragons was the gold standard. It was in fact just the standard. If you were going to do something, make an entertainment show that featured people playing a tabletop game and tell a story through that medium, you would by default use Dungeons and Dragons. Pathfinder is now setting itself up to fill that role because Wizards of the Coast got greedy. Let's see more of this man seeing this post for the first time and reacting to it because it's amazing to see. And this is what we could all have. This is the reaction we could all have if America did more socialist stuff.
Holy, that is I want to say that is like the ballsiest thing I've ever seen someone say. Saying, yeah,
ballsy.
We don't actually need it. Joke's on you. We kept it in there to make you comfortable, Wizards, and so...
Wizards of the Coast made like $150 million last year, so... They are also challenging people that have a mighty legal team.
That other people can use our stuff. We believe, as we always have, that open gaming makes games better, improves profitability for all involved, and enriches the community of gamers who participate in this amazing hobby. Wow, that sounds like Wizards of the Coast 20 years ago. And so we invite gamers from around the world to join us as we begin the next great chapter of open gaming with the release of a new, open, perpetual, and irrevocable open RPG creative license, or orc license. I want an orc license! I want to be a licensed orc!
Just take a second to appreciate that. They're saying right off the bat this is irrevocable. They are taking steps to ensure that if later some capitalist scumbag takes over the company, it doesn't change that the content you made with it now is yours. And you could make content with it later. Still have it be yours. It is an open, irrevocable gaming license. That's the key part. It is irrevocable, as opposed to the old open gaming license, which was not. At least it wasn't written down that it was not. It was understood by most to mean that. But capitalism's a bitch. So, Pathfinder stepping into the role. It gets a little bit better. Let's let him finish up.
The new Open RPG Creative License will be built system agnostic for independent game publishers under the legal guidance of Azora Law, an intellectual property law firm that represents Paizo and several other game publishers. Paizo will pay for this legal work. They're going out of their way to pay for it and write it and publish it, and it sounds like specifically lock themselves in. They're not pulling some loophole like Wizards has that they found in that legal document. They are going to write it airtight so that even if they do explode and become the next Hasbro 20 years from now, they can't go back on this, and I respect the hell out of that. We invite game publishers worldwide to join us in support of the system-agnostic license that allows all games to provide their own unique open rules reference documents that open up their individual game systems to the world. To join the effort and provide feedback on the drafts of this license, please sign up by using this form. Holy cow, this was real. Someone sent me this link, which I'll show just what it shows on screen right here. Someone sent me this like 6 hours ago, and I'm like, that's weird. That's a little sus. How does someone have this? Wow, it's actually real.
Okay, so let me just, let's talk a little bit about who Paizo is, the company. Are they perfect human beings? Remember our Callahan conversation from earlier. Are they perfect? No. But remember also, we don't expect people to be perfect. We expect people to take responsibility. Let's look at their background a little bit. Here's the Wikipedia entry for Paizo. A little fact about the company. On October 14, 2021, an organization representing over 30 Paizo employees announced the formation of the United Paizo Workers, a labor union allied with the Communications Workers of America. By the way, if you're trying to start a union in your industry, at your place of business, first look and see if there is a larger union which can help. They will be delighted to help. Paizo employees announced plans to unionize as the United Paizo Workers under the Communications Workers of America, becoming the first such tabletop game company to have such a union. Hell yeah. The employees stated that recent issues related to managerial impropriety was a driver for the unionization effort. Paizo voluntarily agreed to recognize the union. So recall, we're not asking for saints. We're asking for people to take responsibility. That company did. I don't care what their managerial impropriety was before that moment, because they did the right thing in the moment. Paizo voluntarily agreed to recognize the union, allowing collective bargaining negotiations between the company and the union to commence. Paizo, you beautiful bastards. I'm a Pathfinder player now. That's how it is. That's my game. Here they are, meeting the president. That's a group of grassroots organizers. That's not all Paizo employees. The fella pointed out there is the Paizo employee. In that case, representing the union. Like a mother effing boss. That's how you do it. And that is, by the way, how socialists run things. That's how people who believe in collective bargaining run things. I think you're going to find that the great weakness of capitalism is the same weakness that occurs with royalty. When there's nobody around you to tell you you're wrong, you start believing your own hype. The people at Wizards of the Coast became convinced, from what I can see, that D&D was it. It was all there would ever be. And that they could demand whatever they wanted of people. And you know what? For a while, they might have been right. Except they overestimated how unique they were. There's 1,000 other tabletop gaming systems. Hell, I made one from scratch with my pals just to play a game. Paizo, the makers of Pathfinder, understand what was valuable about the open gaming license. Critical Role did more advertisement for tabletop gaming in general and Dungeons & Dragons specifically than that company, Wizards of the Coast, could have ever purchased. It made fans where none existed before. With the recent moves by the makers of Pathfinder, Paizo, I believe firmly they're going to take that role. And we should use this as an example of the power of people. Watch what happens with Pathfinder and with Dungeons & Dragons. Watch what happens. Over the next 10 years, I am of the belief that you will see Pathfinder overtake Dungeons & Dragons as the most popular tabletop gaming system. You might hear the words Pathfinder in your everyday life, like you used to occasionally hear Dungeons & Dragons in your everyday life. Nostalgic television shows will reference Pathfinder fondly because people have fond feelings towards Pathfinder, like they once did towards Dungeons & Dragons, when it was not associated with greed, but instead was associated with sitting around a table, laughing with your buddies.